Okay, now it's my turn to return the favor. Our next speaker you've heard from all afternoon long. He's a gentleman who has been working as a public servant for over 30 years behind the microphone in various media, mostly on radio. I remember hearing him years ago when I lived in Greensboro. And you hear that voice on the radio and then you never really know the person behind it. And the more and more I got to know our next speaker, the more and more I realized the genuine heart that was behind that voice that came through the radio. You hear him every morning here in the Triad area on WEGO, the Eagle 980 AM. It streams online, so if you aren't in this area, you can even listen to him through your computer anywhere in the world on eagle980.com. The man knows the Constitution. He lives the Constitution. He teaches the Constitution. If you ever need a speaker for any of your group's events to come out and talk about some specific details of the document and its history, this is your man. Please join me in welcoming Bill Flynn.
Hey, thank you. I want to talk about, I got red light already. Thanks, God bless you. It's only fair, isn't it? I want to quickly address something I call the Vanishing Fourth Amendment. And it's a very serious thing, and it's something you have all talked about in some way or another, but it's the right of the people to be secure in the persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Say that with me. Shall not be violated. How many of you feel, or at least even know, that you have been violated in this area? If you didn't raise your hand, I'm going to tell you something that will maybe change where your hand goes at the end of my brief presentation. What happens is, and one of the ways people try to get around this is by saying, well, you're talking to a third party. If you're using a telephone or email, your internet service provider, your satellite dish provider, all of these are third party. Your bank, your cell phone provider. If you read what nobody reads, the small print in that agreement, they all say the same thing. They essentially say they can share your information and you agree to those terms because you're using that product. The same agreement also says they can change that agreement at any time they so wish without really telling you much of anything at all. Now, we just recently saw over 80% of your financial transactions are being monitored. How many know that? All right. How many know what to do to get under that radar if you want to? Here's the answer. Use cash. All right? Not many people are willing to do that, but if you do it, here's the essential difference. You own the receipt when you buy something with cash. If you buy on credit card or debit card, you know who owns that receipt? The issuing bank. And they can do with it whatever they will. I want to tell you quickly how important this is. And that goes to the Fourth Amendment and even all of our unalienable rights. And it comes down to a friend of mine went to the doctor. And the doctor said, "Do you smoke cigarettes?" He said, "Yes." The next thing he knew, he was labeled a tobacco abuser by that physician's office. And this is, I have documentation of this on my Facebook page, you'll see. If you go to the doctor and do that, you may get a knock on your door. And sure enough, in Kernersville, North Carolina, within a few weeks of that doctor's appointment, he got a letter from the Department of Health and Human Services. And you know what it said? "We are coming to your house." I kid you not. And we're going to ask you a whole bunch of questions, and we'll pay you $30 to fill out this survey. Well, after he and I talked, he learned to say not just no, but hell no to that. Would you agree? So you might be asking, what is the big deal here, Bill? It is, I have nothing to hide. You hear that from family and friends. It's not about what you have to hide. It is about the job of government to always protect your rights and never be ambivalent to them and never ever be hostile to them. And our government is hostile to our rights. And you know how to get them to stop? Be the adult, just like a child. You tell them, stop, don't do it again. And if enough of us continue to do that, we will win that fight. We've got to be very, very strong in this. Now, one other thing to consider, Obamacare, and this is a great reason to burn your Obamacare card at the top of the hill, to sign the defund Obamacare package. Mr. Harrington touched on this. But you do know with Obamacare, that will then become a base requirement for you if you want to go maybe purchase a weapon. And it'll work just like this, I predict. Either you're in the Obamacare system or you're not. Oh, Mr. Flynn, you're not in the Obamacare system. You can't buy a weapon because we have to check that. How many of you know or feel that that is coming? Should be no surprise. Well, Bill, that survey you talked about, that was entirely voluntary, right? Well, it is now. How many of you have ever filled out an IRS tax form that was voluntary? Well, a couple of people understand the very strong point. But the idea is, if you don't fill out your tax form, if you leave something blank, what happens? You hear back from them. And so does your bank account. And potentially your attorney and your jailer. So understand this. If you go to the doctor right now, they say, are you got any weapons in your house? You say, I'm not going to answer that. Well, that's maybe fine for now. But that will be a reason in your Obamacare notation that you did not answer a question. And consistent with the IRS expectations, the demand of information will be there. Otherwise, guess what? You won't be able to buy a weapon. You may be, because you were, back to my friend that got the letter from the Department of Health and Human Services, the baseline they're looking for, and this ought to send a chill through all of us. There's a company out of the Research Triangle Park called RTI. They signed a $101 million contract to do 67,000 household interviews per year across the country. It's those people that came to my friend's house that we're talking about. In those notations, what they're ultimately looking to do is to declare that person, that household, somebody in it, mentally incompetent. They're looking for relationships between smoking, drinking, alcohol abuse, drug abuse. They're trying to prove that you have some mental deficiency. Now, unless you're a Democrat in Congress, and you're here, you ought not to be declared that. But I will tell you this, everybody in this audience today could well be declared at least mentally questionable by the same people. What did you say? Bring it on? Bring it on. Meet you out. Okay, meet you there. How many of you, by the way, are packing today? Just curious. Let's see here. When you say bring it on, I understand. But do understand what we're fighting here is ultimately the power of totalitarianism. And you and I have to stand up and speak against it at every possible point. The people at the top of this hill are organizations that can help you amplify your voice. And it's important we do that. Very, very important we do that. We've got to find a way to continue to push back. You look around this audience, if you would, wherever you're seated, look beside you, look behind you. Because what you will see is the most fearsome force, the most fearsome political force in America today. It is you and what you to believe. And it scares the ever-living kiss my southern grits out of those people, not just in Raleigh, but also in Washington, D.C. and on our city councils. Just in closing here, I want to mention, we talk an awful lot about the Constitution, and I'm thrilled and honored to do that. And I think of the work that you and I are doing here today is building a ship that's ready to sail. And that ship has got a beautiful bunch of artwork on it and beautiful sails, but the thing that ultimately is going to power that ship is not how much we know about the Constitution or even how much we love our country, although those are critical things. What will power this ship, I believe, what our forefathers and founders showed us, is that divine providence. Literally, the winds of revival have got to hit our country in order for us to move forward. Would you agree? In closing, I just want to tell you, the only way that that can happen and will happen is, yes, for us to be vocal. To say, no, we will not tolerate Kay Hagan in office anymore. No, we will not tolerate Richard Burr voting with such lack of integrity. You know, we will not tolerate that. And we will find candidates and people to do the right thing and to stand behind those candidates and support them when they're right and to call them out when they're wrong. We've got to do both of those things. Do it with a sense of pride and humor and fun. Because it is fun, isn't it? Isn't it fun to be an American? Yeah! Never let anybody forget it. Don't you forget it. Remind everybody. And remember this in your next meeting. My time is up. I'm headed out. And when your next meeting, if you recognize every face around you, you're in the wrong place. We have got to spread the message. God bless each one of you, Patriots. I'm Bill Flynn, and we're going to continue with our program, Dan.